I not weak? In other words, hey, if you're feeling weak, can I not feel weak? I started to the further left than you did. Who is made to stumble? Do I not burn with indignation? Another version would say, do I not burn in my flesh? In other words, am I not tempted just like you are? So then, Paul, if you went from all the way over here to all the way over here, how did you do it? So a lot of the stuff that you're dealing with now would not equal what they had to deal with back then. But it's different circumstances. He can place you in a position to where your health is in jeopardy or your finances. And in this day and time, in this country, that is like death. Or relationships. Or whatever you want to say. Your career. A lot of people identify themselves or their self-worth with what they do for a living. You've been trained to do something for 20-some years. Then all of a sudden God tell you, you ain't doing that no more. Well, what am I supposed to do? Sit and wait. Some of y'all waiting on the Lord now, bored. You might be working. You're not working in the field that you thought you'd be working in, or you're not working in the capacity you thought you'd be working in. You know he's put you on the sideline. You know he's got something for you to do later on. But right now, in your professional life, you're not being fulfilled the way you thought you would. Let me stay there for a second. How many people know what I'm talking about? Amen. Let me hit something let me hit something from a different angle. Spouses. Some of y'all would make incredible spouses. Some of y'all. Not all of you. Some of y'all need to slow roast a little longer. And you knew you would be a great wife or a great husband. And you got to wait. And then you look at some unsaved folk. You know, some folk that married and don't even want to be married. Some of them got a good spouse and don't even want it. Some people, you know, they had their pick and they wouldn't be a good one. And you sitting there waiting, starving. By yourself. Lonely. Reading books. Some of y'all done read the print off of some of the books you got in the house. Watched all the movies, know all the praise songs backwards and forward. You just sit there bored sometimes. Watching the clock. Is it time to go to sleep? Yeah. Because you got nothing to do. Why? Why is he making you wait? What I realized by revelation is there's a place in the waiting where the weakness or the way we view the weakness, there's an opening. There's a portal where you open up and you get to see Jesus. Not just the miracle. You get to see him. Think about that for a second. Let me stay there for a second. Have you noticed, for those of you that pray, that in your morning prayers, for those of you that have a time when you like to pray with him, that now, as soon as you go into the place of prayer, as soon as you get down on your knees, for those of you that know how to get on your knees, as soon as you get down and you open up, it's like a wave of joy that comes in. Huh? Before you get the first utterance out, before you even get a chance to start asking for stuff, there's just a joy, a flow, a river of supernatural euphoria. Yes. How many people know what I'm talking about? Did you notice that it just started happening while you were in the place of what looks like in the natural extreme weakness? Y'all stuck? Raise your hand. I don't want you to exert yourself and clap, okay? Just raise one hand. How many people know what I'm talking about? Raise your hands high. High, 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 high. Look around the room. Everybody, almost everybody, except for the two that sleep in the middle. How many people know that that's what has profited you in this most recent trial? what you're learning, not just intellectually, but what your spirit man is learning, that when I'm weak, I am. When I am weak, I am strong. Paul goes on to say in verse 30, if I must boast, I will boast in the things which concern my infirmity. In other words, I done been through all of this. I done fought the lion, the tiger, and the bear. Okay? I know I put the tiger in there. And it doesn't matter. Come with me. You know what I mean? You get to a point, if you're a warrior, if you're used to doing something enough, and then you get good at it, and then you get really good at it, until you know that it's not even something that you have to consciously think about. It becomes second nature. It's autopilot. Hearns, Tommy Hearns. I usually like the heavyweights, but Hearns, once he got into it, he would get into a place where when they were really rumbling, oh my God, the more he would go, the better he would get. There was a fight with Sugar Ray Leonard. I really believe he won that fight, but Sugar Ray was the favorite. You know what I'm talking about? Yep. I'm losing some of y'all. What am I saying? I'm saying that you've been in the fight and the storm so much until really the fight doesn't affect you. Once you step into it, you know you've got the victory at some point, whether it takes 3 minutes or 30 minutes, whether it takes 30 minutes or 3 days, you know he's going to do something. You've almost learned to conquer the anxiety of stepping into the fight. So now all you have to do is to understand the purpose of the trial. How is it going to benefit me? How am I going to be elevated? God, if this is the way that I have to walk, twist my mind, untwist my mind, so that I may see the divine purpose and learn to enjoy it while I'm going through. How many people know? When I am weak, I am strong. Go with me to verse 12, to chapter 12 and verse 11. 12 and 11. And it says, I have become a fool in the boasting. You have compelled me, for I ought to have been commended by you. For in nothing was I behind the most eminent apostles. In other words, all those so-called super apostles, they ain't got nothing on me. All them ones that walked in the miracles, all the ones that pronounced signs and wonders, I got all of that and then some. That's what he was saying. That's what I say. That's what you should be saying. I walk in that power. But even with that power, I am still nothing. In other words, that power has nothing to do with me individually. It's the power of God. And because he's blessed me to be in the place of humility, I get to be in that place as a vessel for him to operate through me. How many people know? So really, it's an honor to be placed in that position where God has blessed you to be humbled, because it's honored. He who exalts himself will be humbled, but he who humbles himself will be exalted. Or he who allows himself to be humbled will be exalted. And in the place of humility is where he's elevating you. He says, I am nothing. He goes on to say, truly the signs of an apostle were accomplished among this with perseverance and signs and wonders and deeds. In other words, the distinction of an apostle is to walk in miracles, to walk in signs and wonders. And he's saying that surely you can say I'm an apostle by all the things that are behind me, the signs and wonders. But it means nothing. And what does it all mean? What am I preaching about? You got all this power. You've been through all of these trials and tribulations. You walked all of this time with God. Yeah. It sounds all good, but really, for a lot of you, you have really kind of lost your taste. I knew I wouldn't get none. 0 amens. Let me come on the other side. See, can I get some honest saints? It doesn't feel good anymore for what you've been waiting for. You don't have the same excitement like you did because you've been waiting a long time. You ever been real hungry and you knew you was going to go eat? You thought you were going to eat at 4, so you didn't eat lunch. And then somebody was late And then Peanut and them got delayed. Juju got lost. Then Pookie had a headache. Not our Pookie. Oh, no, it's not Pookie. By the time you get to eat at 7:30, and then you thought you was going to go somewhere and get some barbecue, and you love barbecue, but it ended up being some salmon, and it wasn't cooked right. So by the time you get to eat, first of all, it was the wrong thing. It wasn't what you thought, but you lost your appetite. You didn't enjoy it. Amen. That's kind of how you feel right now in the spirit, isn't it? Amen. Got 2 amens. I don't want y'all to exert yourself. Raise your hand. Raise your hand and wave them if you know what I'm talking about. Because we're conditioned as Christians not to murmur and complain, but how do we deal with what we're feeling on the inside? You change your way of looking at it. You come to the realization that when I am weak, I'm strong. In the weakness, the weakness is not going to feel good. But you have to be in that place of not feeling good in order to get the humility. The power is in the humility. The elevation is in the humility. I think I've presented that point. So I have to be humble in order to get the elevation. And I have to go through this, and for some of us, we have to continue to go through it because our elevation is consistent. It's a progressive place. So then how do I learn to digest it to where it's not making me feel so blah? How many people know what I'm talking about this morning? Chapter 12, verse 1. 2 Corinthians. Paul goes on to say, it is doubtless not profitable for me to boast. I will come to the visions and revelations of the Lord. In other words, he's shifting gears here. I done already told you about the trials I've been through, up, down, round, round, all the battles and all that. I showed you the signs and wonders that I walk in. I've made the mark as an apostle, but even as a super apostle, it doesn't mean anything for where I am right now and for what I'm trying to show you, is what he was saying. So let me talk about it from the other side. I've been through the trials, I've been through the fire. I've been up and down, round and round. I know that the battle means nothing because I always win. You can look at the positive side. I've been in revelations with God that would blow your mind. He says, I will come to visions and revelations in the Lord. He says, I know a man in Christ 14 years ago, whether it was in the body or out of the body, I don't know. God knows. But such a one was caught up in the third heaven. And I know such a man. Whether it was an inner body experience or an outer body experience, I don't know. It was mind-blowing. How he was caught up into paradise and heard the inexpressible words which is not lawful for a man to utter. Of such one I will boast. Yet not of myself will I boast, except in my infirmities. In other words, I'm not going to say it was me. It wasn't me. But I had to go through all of this stuff in order to get that elevation into the place of paradise with God. In other words, it felt so good, I can't even explain it. It was so high. It was so euphoric. I don't know whether I was in my body or out of my body. I don't know. Now, I thought for years that he was talking about a one-time experience from 14 years ago. Right? He was saying from 14 years ago is when he first experienced it. That's what God has given all of you, if you hear my voice on this morning. Remember what I said in prayers? When you go into prayers now, it's more joy. Amen. You're probably not praying quite as much or as fervently because you're tired. But when you do pray, it opens up your heart. You feel great. Amen. Really, your prayers are sweeter than you've ever prayed before. And really, if you can get past what you're dealing with as what the trial is and the heaviness, you'll see that you've already been elevated to the place of paradise. That joy that Paul is speaking about is where you live. So the next time you're feeling some sort of way, get on the floor. Get down on your knees and just praise God. Forget about whatever you're feeling some sort of way about. It can't be but 3 or 4 categories. Money, health, honey, something like that. Forget about that for a minute. Just praise him. Just hang out with him. After all, the reason you're in this place is because you asked for more of him and less of you. Oh, how many people know what I'm talking about on this morning? And you can continue to cultivate that thing. You see, in the place of weakness is where you're forced to go before him and pray. And you pray so much you probably prayed more in this trial than you ever have. You prayed to the point to where you're tired of praying, really. You know it's already done. He told you it was done a long time ago. You're tired of talking about it. You do it out of what's the word? Obligation, because you want to make sure you keep it going. But really, you want that to be over. Forget about that prayer. Thank him, keep it moving, and just pray about the beautiful place that you are with him. See the paradise. He put you in the holding pattern so you could see what the true reality is. Him. Stop worrying about your little stuff. He already showed you that. You've been through all of the stuff that Paul has been through, just in different ways. It wasn't shipwrecked, and it wasn't, you weren't getting bit by a viper. The vipers nowadays are not snakes on the ground. They're snakes at your job. He was caught up in the third heaven. You've been caught up in the third heaven. You've been translated into paradise. All you have to do is open your eyes and see that you now live in the third heaven. Because of the weakness, which you conceive to be weakness. He says it was paradise and heard inexpressible words, and it was not lawful for a man to utter. I'm not going to boast of myself, but if I do, I'm going to boast of my infirmities, of my weakness. In verse 6, it says, for though I might desire to boast, I will not be a fool, for I will speak the truth. In other words, I want to brag about the blessings and I want to brag about the elevation, but I'm not going to be a fool because I realize there's no power in the bragging. The power is in the humility. Paul was talking about this experience. He wasn't even saying it was him. He was talking about it in third person. In other words, it was such a great experience, he still wanted to be in the place of humility while he was telling you about it. I think I will refrain lest anybody might think of me above what he sees to be or hears from me. In other words, I don't want anything to get the glory except for Jesus. It goes on to say in verse 7, and I'm closing soon, and lest I shall be exalted above measure by the abundance of the revelations. Now this last part, I really want you to get this. Okay. How many of you all have a special gift or talent where you better than most people? Probably all of y'all in some way. In fact, I got some people in that shit. I raise my hand. Raise your hand. Raise your hand. Raise your hand. Okay. Okay. If you had the talent when you were young, you probably had some sort of issue at some point to deal with your ego. Okay. Y'all don't want to raise your hand for that, right? Let me put it a different way. I was talking to one of our members who has a child who's very blessed in a certain area. Okay? This was last week or 2 or 3. And the child is so blessed in this particular area that it leads to other blessings. Then the child is grown, but still young-minded in some ways. And the child is so blessed until it's messing with the child's, well, not the child, but the young person is messing with their mind to think that it's them. To the point to where there's a lot of ego, a lot of arrogance, and manipulation and control. I'm sure none of y'all would ever do anything like that. Okay. Now, God is dealing with this particular individual in humbling this person. And really, he led me to talk to this individual's parent, who's a member here, and to show him what God is doing and why and how he was going to do it. The child is being humbled to learn how to deal with the gift. So in a way, the child has to take a step back to learn the humility in order to take 3 steps forward into the greatness that is probably the destiny for that individual. Now, I hope that person doesn't mind if I would be more specific. that person doesn't mind, just send me a signal if you know who I'm talking about from the congregation. Is it okay? Just tweak your nose or something if it's okay if I tell them who I'm talking about. I guess not. All right, well, I won't go any further with that. The point that I'm making is each one of you has a gift. God is destining you for greatness in whatever area. Doesn't matter how old you are. You could be 19 years old, you could be 94. He's got something big for you to do next. He's pulled you back to get more humility because the empowerment is in the humility. The understanding is in what would be considered weakness. Okay? In the weakness, he opens up the third heaven, so to speak, so you can see him and feel him more clearly. You're really floating along a lazy river in the spirit place. There's really no worry at all, even though your existence is defying natural logic. How many people know what I'm talking about? Amen. Everything about your life doesn't make any sense by what natural standards would be. And really, as long as you keep the distractions off of you, you have a more peaceful existence, a more exuberant existence than you ever thought possible. Even though you have not yet seen the manifestation of the one or two big things that you thought you needed God for, he's shown you a place of peace and joy and happiness that you didn't even know possible, even before the manifestation of what you thought were the big promises. How many people know what I'm talking about on this morning? So really, he's shown you the very epitome of the statement that when I'm weak, I am strong. So now what we need to do is allow our minds to be transformed to realize that what seems to be a trial or a tribulation is not necessarily a hardship. I was watching Shane Mosley. That boy was beating him. I mean, his face, the one announcer said, it looked like his face been through a meat grinder. And it did. His face was all swollen up, beat down. But he didn't matter. He was flipping his, I mean, he was doing some stuff I haven't seen him do in 15 years. He was doing his thing. And, yeah, he got hit in the head a few times. His face was swollen up, but he's a boxer. So that stuff will go down in a day or two. It was the best. It might have been the best fight of his life for his legacy. He'd already fought all them other fights. They were already behind him. This right here, that was for the Hall of Fame. It didn't even really matter. It didn't matter if he won or lost. Right. The fight, this last fight was for his legacy. This last fight for y'all, you already know that once it's over, once God manifests this next step, everything else, the decks are cleared. Right. You've already put your time in. You've already fought all the fights that you need to fight. Okay? You're no longer a prize fighter. You're fighting now for the Hall of Fame. You understand what I'm saying? The onesie-twosies don't matter. Matter of fact, you don't even, the onesie-twosies are not even a sweat to you anymore. You pray about something and leave it alone. You go to sleep when it looks like it should be a big fight. That's right. That's right. It's this one little thing that God is manifesting in your life that's going to be life-changing. But in this last fight, you have to realize the value of everything that he's shown you up to this point. That when I am weak, I am strong. He said, I was given revelations in abundance, and a thorn was given to me in the flesh, a message of Satan to buffet me, lest I would be exalted above measure. In other words, for some of you, most of you, your gifts are so profound that it would make your head too big to be used right. Okay, so God had to put a thorn in your side so he could continue to impart what he had for you. In other words, what he has for you is so great, you would have a big head. You wouldn't act right. You'd be smelling yourself. You follow what I'm saying? You wouldn't be able to handle it. That's why he had to hold you in that holding pattern with the thorn in your side. That's why he had to marinate that tail and then slow roast it and then flip it over. And that's why it seemed like it was taking such a long time. But all the fights are over. He said, concerning this one thing, I pleaded with God 3 times that he would depart this thorn from me. And he said to me, My grace is sufficient. My grace is sufficient. In other words, I got you. You know, I know you want that big money to break, but I was the one that told you about it to begin with. You wouldn't even know, right? So you just relax and sit yourself down. I got you. My grace is sufficient. I got you. My grace is sufficient. Like the little kid, not the little kid, like the teenager. You say, oh well, yeah. If you get good grades, I'ma take you to the mall. No. I'm gonna buy you a car. You do good for this next year in school. I'm gonna get you a car. Ain't gonna be a brand new car. I'm gonna get you a little something to get around there. And they run home with them. See, let's go now. They won't go right there. I got you. Ain't gonna be right now. You know, ain't gonna be today. Might not be this month, but I got you. I got you. Meantime, I'm going to keep taking care of you, and I'm going to keep feeding you, and I'm going to keep a roof over your head, and I'm going to keep clothes on your back, and I'm going to keep encouraging you. I'm going to keep loving you. I'm going to keep being your daddy, or I'm going to keep being your mama. I'm going to keep doing what I've been doing this whole time. That's what he's saying to you on this morning. I know you wanted to bust wide open, but my grace is sufficient. I've had you in this holding pattern for a long time because I wanted you to see the value of what opens up in the weakness. And now you've been blessed with more of my presence than you ever thought possible. And I haven't even busted the blessing wide open yet. My grace is sufficient. My grace is sufficient. No matter what it looks like, the weakness is where the strength is, but the strength is where the weakness is, and there's nothing that can come against you that would conquer you. I've shown you this in the weakness. And now it's tangible. It's in you. It's second nature, like a professional boxer. No matter what comes your way, no matter what, got you. Because my grace is sufficient. My grace is sufficient, and my strength is made perfect. Not almost perfect, not 99%, but my strength, the strength of Jesus Christ, is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, instead of me looking at my infirmities, instead of me looking at my weaknesses, instead of me looking at the trial as something that's, such a burden, this fight will be over soon. And it'll be the most glorious time of your life. Yes. Oh, well, actually, if you look at it differently and realize that it's an honor to be in this place, you realize the fight is already over, and you already are in the most glorious time of your life. Because really, what I said coming in is the true value of the blessing. And the weakness is where you see Jesus the most. His strength is made perfect in the weakness. Therefore, when I am weak, I am strong.